One of the features that Misty is really known for is the ability to include real-time data within conversations that you're having with models, whether they be an online model or even a local model like I have here with Cogito. And just a little bit of trivia, Misty was doing this even before ChatGPT or any of the major online models were including web searches when chatting with the models. So Misty is one of the OGs with this feature. I want to just highlight the two main ones that you'll see if you're using Misty Studio Desktop. And those, of course, are Google and Brave. And then below that, you'll see some API options, which are a lot more stable. And I would certainly recommend using these if you have an ORM license for Misty Studio, because the experience is going to be way better, way quicker, way faster, way more stable than the standard Google and Brave options that we have at the top. So I'm going to focus in on Google and Brave for this demo. Let's start with Google. So when you click on Google and apply it and then ask a question such as, how is the weather in London? What's happening behind the scenes is that Misty is using Google to search for the weather in London based on what I asked the model. And Misty is getting results returned back and then pass those along to the model. In this case, I'm using Cogito, which is a local model, but it would be the same workflow if this was via an online model such as ChatGPT. And so looking at this, we could see some information here. We could see some of the real-time context that appears. And this is what you want to see from the results with Google. But there's something missing, like this source 2 is a little different than what we may typically see. Let's try asking another question real quick about what is the capital of California. And again, Misty behind the scenes is getting the results from Google, and then once it gets the results, passing those over as context to the model. Okay, and this is what I was looking for. So you can see in this first response, I was getting the source 2 back, but this is more atypical. What we typically want to see is this where you hover over it and then it gives you more information. The reason for the difference is that this was returned in a more standard format that we're aware of, where we basically replace the sources with these nice little tag type UI items here where we see Wikipedia, and then you could hover over it, and then you could copy the URL to your clipboard and paste that into a browser. You could also make these clickable links, and I'll show you how to do that now. If you go to the settings area, and then on the general tab, look for where it says rendering modules, and then expand that dropdown. And then if you scroll to the bottom, if you want to see that nice citation hover over display, keep citations checked. But if you also want to be able to click on those links, click on enable links. We have this disabled by default, really for security reasons. You may not want to click on just any link that you get from a model. Even if you think you trust that model, they might be using a source that's not so trustworthy. So that's why we keep that disabled by default. And then if we go back to the conversation and hover over it, you can see how the cursor turned to a pointer, so we could just click on that and open up that link in a new browser window. And if I click back on the globe icon and then click on advanced options, there's some additional settings that you could configure for Google and for Brave. If you want to use a custom search query, go ahead and enter it here, but I'd recommend just allowing the model to decide based off the question that you're asking. And then you could also limit by domain, such as if you only want search results from reddit.com or some other source, you can enter those domains in here, as well as add some extra operators. And this would be for the typical search operators you probably learned about in high school that you could just add there. And if you want to reduce the number of results that are used for the context, you can decrease the maximum search results or increase them, as well as if there's some kind of date sensitivity, like if you just want news results that were published within a certain time frame, you can add that date time frame here. But what I'm going to do is click on Brave next, and then expand their options. And how about we just limit the search domain to reddit.com? And how about we reduce it to 3 results? And I'm going to use Brave. And then I'm going to add a context shield here right below the previous results. And then let's see, how about tell me about Misty Studio? And let's see what we get back from Reddit. Okay, so we see the response here. And if we expand real-time data context, we should expect 3 results only from Reddit, which is what we see here. And we could see more information about Msty Studio up in the response. And yeah, it looks pretty good. So that's how you can further configure the search results. Brave has been working pretty consistently with me. Google, on the other hand, just maybe a little bit of a life hack here. So Google, if you use that and you don't see any results show up, in which case you'll know that because a lot of times the response will say that there was some sort of issue. And then if you expand real-time data context, there will just be nothing under that. So what I've noticed is sometimes Google will have another pop-up window that might show up just behind the Msty Desktop application, and it might have some kind of like capture form or something just to verify that you're not a robot. And then once you solve that puzzle, then you should start seeing the results as you would expect. For the free version, the Google and Brave options are pretty good, but if you're an Orem user, I would recommend instead of using these, get the Google or Brave API or one of these other provider API keys, and I'll show you how to do that in another video.